You get up and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis the 13th, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my real top niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day prepping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose a big holes at the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas to get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
And we are live. Welcome to the one and only UCY Radio. This is Voice of Rebellion Radio with your host, Chris J. It is a Sunday night. It is a pretty warm night, I would say, for December on the East Coast and probably out there on the West Coast. A different story. It's a lot colder out there. But we're not talking about any of these places. We're talking about the south of the border, way down into South America, Latin America. Tonight is where our focus is going to be on. There's a few things going on, and there's also another event that I didn't even really know was going on. Well, half an event, really, that's going on over on the other side of the world. But mainly we're going to focus on one event that's happening in South America, plus Latin America as a whole. By the way, I'm alone in the studio tonight. So it'll just be me talking, and we don't have callers, but I'm going to make this an interactive show. I will be reading things out of the UCY radio chat room, so if you have any questions or whatever, put that in the chat room, and I will respond, because we do have 2 hours, and yes, there's a lot to talk about, because there's a recent event in Argentina with one of the elections they had there, and now there's another election that's happening a little further north, and a lot more. We're just going to be talking a lot about the history. The recent last 15, 20 years of Latin America, just a revolution of people rising up, the poor of all these countries, rising up against the rich elite that had ruled that place throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s. Operation Condor. The ugly past of Venezuela finally turned their heads away from and moved forward and made it a more progressive, revolutionary society all throughout Latin America. And I think that now we're at a crossroads, definitely. This is the crossroads between either continuing the revolution, continuing the progress that's been made in South America, or falling back to where we were in the 80s and 90s in South America, where we had fascist dictatorships popping up left and right, and we had corporations, and what you can call ultra-capitalism, but a really better word was just pure, is corporatism. Pure corporation power taking over all of South America, Latin America. We had Bolivia in the 70s, well, 60s, they had a fascist dictatorship. And now we look today, it's very different. We have a native of Bolivia, not even a Hispanic person, but a native South American, Evo Morales, who has now taken charge, made giant progress. And, I think a lot of times in the activist community, we talk about Venezuela and their giant leaps forward, but Bolivia's fallen into the shadow, but they've actually done with poverty reduction better than Venezuela did. They have the best poverty reduction in the region during the Morales years since he took power in 2006. He's been absolutely amazing. They're finally, it's not even like they're taking power for the first time. What it is restoration back to the rightful owners of the Bolivian land. And the one thing that made it possible is because Bolivia is the last country in the Western Hemisphere, if there even is another one in the Western Hemisphere, where the majority of the population is still the native population, native Amerindians of Bolivia. 55% of the country is that, and then the other, there's not too many, I think it's less than 10% are white. Most of the population, I think maybe like 20, I don't know if I have my demographics here, probably 20-ish percent is normal Hispanic, like 10% is black. But it's one of the few countries in the Western Hemisphere like that. But there's just been incredible growth, incredible progress, incredible progress that has risen the poor out of the slums, risen the poor out of sifting through trash. And now Bolivia, these people have a future. These people have steady jobs. These people have the government that doesn't represent the corporation has kicked out these mega corporations. The government that is not only helping out the Bolivian people, but people that do good for the people around the world. They have offered a Snowden, I think, asylum, or they released. It was actually, they got caught up in a big scandal because the United States forced the downing of the Bolivian plane holding Evo Morales because they said that he was transporting Snowden back to Bolivia. Is what they thought. I don't know if they actually thought that. Of course, Snowden wasn't on the plane. If I have that wrong, maybe it was Assange. Really hope I don't have the two whistleblowers confused. I think it's possible it was Snowden because Snowden is not in Russia permanently. I think that Snowden is going to live in Latin America in the future permanently. Snowden is not living in Russia permanently. He is going to be in Russia probably for the remainder of his temporary asylum for 3 years, and I don't think he's going to stay. It's not because he's against Putin or against the Russian government or anything like that. I think it's just the fact that things would be a lot more steady, a lot more permanent, and he's kind of indicated he'd rather go to Latin America and do his permanent asylum there. I think he would want to come back to the United States one day. However, just being a corporate fascist country or government is a fascist government that wants Snowden with his head on a spike. All the candidates have pretty much the same reaction towards Snowden, which is putting him in jail and calling him a treasonous former NSA employee, which just for exposing to the people the incredible links that the NSA has went to doing surveillance on us and watching our every move electronically. Conversations like this, phone calls, every phone call has been tapped since the Ronald Reagan administration in the 1980s. So for the last 30 years, if you made a phone call, it's been recorded and probably stored at the NSA database in Utah. Anyways, we also will be talking about a little bit. We're going to be talking just all around South America today. But what I was going to mention, towards the end, because something big happened today, is the voters went out to vote today for the parliament. I'm going to have coverage and recap probably towards the end of the show because this is a live event that's going on. And actually, I have Freddie Nunez from RNA News, smaller news, but they're one of our sponsors of Voice of Rebellion Radio. Lives in Venezuela, so pretty much we have a ground, we have a person to go to, give us up-to-date results, and also my friend Caleb Malpin from Press TV is currently in Venezuela doing investigative reporting. I was originally on a Skype call with him this morning, however, things didn't exactly work out, but I told him that give me updated results. I don't think that it's possible we won't have the finished results by the end of the show because we are talking about this election that amassed the entire country, and that means that sometimes the tallying takes the entire day, or might even go into tomorrow. It will be 11:30 Venezuelan Standard Time by the time that this show wraps up. They are 30 minutes further, or 30 minutes later than the Eastern Standard Time. The show does wrap up at 11 Eastern, and I don't know when the polls exactly closed. I think it's around 6 or 7 they closed over their time. Should have been, that means that was either 5:30 or 6:30 our time here in Eastern Standard Time. So it's definitely at this point would be tallying, I'm pretty sure, because it's already now about almost 9:40 Eastern or Venezuelan Standard Time currently, and it'll definitely be it's a polarizing election because it's almost split half and half. There's the people that have been influenced by the rich, influenced by the violent right wing that's committed terrorist acts in Venezuela, have committed acts against the Bolivarian government there, and at the behest of the United States government. A lot of these people, the top organizers of the violent right wing opposition, which the supposed more moderate have not denounced, and these people that the claim that the Venezuelan government is they're going to say that they hire armed thugs against them or whatever, when the truth is these are militias independently organized, from my understanding, independently organized, and it just demonstrates actually how a country that Alex Jones and the fake truthers, as I just saw another thing from Alex Jones that just sickened me about, and then something about talk about, he pretty much went with the whole Fox News line about Muslims. He went, he also always talks bad about Venezuela, just like Fox News or any mainstream media would. And, Alex Jones always says that they ban guns, but that is completely not true. In fact, they allow armed militias, which armed militias, are considered domestic terrorists in the United States. Alex Jones has a very hypocritical, because at times he just flips back and forth. He says, well, America has better gun laws than most countries, but we need to keep it. And at times he seems like, well, we might be screwed up, but all these other countries are more screwed up, and we're becoming screwed up like them. And he also talks about, of course, he talks about the New World Order and how he's against it. However, he opposes practically every government that actually is against the New World Order. In fact, and he jumps every now and then. He tries to get the Putin bandwagoners, because there's a difference between a true Putin supporter and somebody that just jumped on the bandwagon because some right-wing guy, Alex Jones, told him to, not knowing the full implications. They just see some post like David Duke or whatever, or Alex Jones, and they say, oh, look, Putin's a good guy. But if these guys were to say opposite at one point, for whatever reason, they would be right off the Putin bandwagon. They don't know anything about the gold standard that Putin is trying to put the ruble on. Don't know anything about kicking out the Rothschilds in 2006. Or know very little about the actual details or the Soros or the Rothschilds arrest warrants that were actually put out by the Putin government. And also the fact that Putin has obviously, it looks like recently, has taken a stance in favor of Palestinian statehood, and eventually, I think Russia eventually would like to see the Palestinian one Palestinian state. Of course, we're differentiating between people that have actually done the research, people that have actually care about humanity in general. I mean, I think Alex Jones, honestly, if he wasn't getting paid his water filter money, he wouldn't do the radio thing. He would go and retire. He's been around. I know he's been around 20-something years, and he probably could have retired a few years ago, but he's still probably getting good money. I'll tell you that. Anyways, we have originally I was going to have somebody call in, but now that's not applicable, and hopefully, I still haven't went to UCY chat room. I'm hoping that this time, apparently last time there was a few complaints about quality of the broadcast. I mean, the actual clear. I was talking, how it sounded, and I was also, and I guess probably. And the last time I had Vincent, and he kept telling me about it. I don't have anybody in the studio even, tell me I'm going to be now I'm going to have to go to UCY chat room. So if you had any questions the first 15 minutes of the show that felt were being ignored, I'm about to go to the chat room and see. I don't think there was too much. Anyways, we now are seeing, a very pivotal event in the history of South America right now with these elections in Venezuela. Because if it goes badly, if it goes the right wing wins, they've pretty much stated that their intentions is probably an early collapse of the Bolivian government once they take the National Assembly. The National Assembly is something they don't even agree with. They would actually crumble the National Assembly and probably try to get rid of the country. I know they definitely would. It's possible they would try to redraft the Constitution, get rid of the Constitution that was voted on popular by the people. It wasn't anything like they won states or whatever. No, one was a popular vote, a direct vote. Over 50% of the Venezuelan people voted for the 1999 Constitution, and that radically changed the country. Radically reduce the poverty in the country. And how did they do it? How did they reduce the poverty? And how? Well, let's go with a few of the things that they did. Is that Venezuela is, of course, a very oil-rich country. Oil corporations from ExxonMobil that weren't even Venezuelan in the first place, but were from other countries. And anyways, even if they were Venezuelan, didn't matter because these corporations had never helped out the Venezuelan people whatsoever. And it had taken giant profits for years and years. And oil, a resource, a resource that's unfortunately pivotal towards a country's economy, and just very important. It's unfortunately you have to have it almost. I mean, there's very few countries that have been able to go to completely renewable resources, and there were under many different circumstances that what goes to the real world is that unfortunately, oil is going to continue to be a resource that's fought over. If Venezuela had a ton of it and they could sell it, the government took charge of it. They nationalized the resource, cutting all the corporations off of their profits. And that's what started really the beginning of all the anti-Chavez rhetoric was these upset oil CEOs in the early 2000s saying Chavez is a communist, Chavez is a dictator, all this stuff, when he had barely even taken power for any time. These oil CEOs had already started a war of words against Chavez, and they used the media that that was controlled more than only one media source in 2002 during the coup that happened that was supported by the United States government was actually state media supportive of Chavez. The rest of it was all against them. All the private media in the country that was owned by similar media heads that owned CNN. In fact, CNN was allowed. I'm pretty sure Fox and all the other MSNBC, all these major ones were in the country lying to the Venezuelan people like they do to the American people. And then there was only one state channel. I think it kind of evolved into Telesur. It's still like that. Still 60% or more of the media is controlled by the opposition. They have complete freedom of press in Venezuela, way more than the United States. In fact, in 2002, different media sources in Venezuela called for the assassination of Hugo Chavez. Imagine if right now the MSNBC, actually probably a Fox News host, I don't know, it just doesn't matter, just they're all on the same team. We'll just say one goes rogue and says, we need we should assassinate whatever government official. What would happen to that person next day? What if I even said that? Probably, there's a high likelihood I would go to jail. But if they said it, I just imagine they'd probably be on the first flight to Guantanamo or something. So that just shows maybe the over freedom of press that Venezuela had at that time. I guess, it definitely led to a violent situation, actually, by allowing this kind of rhetoric to be spewed on their TVs and have these complete lies, because eventually these people were encouraged to, literally, it wasn't like they went out and clashed with their fist or whatever. They clashed with guns. These are just regular people. Of course, I'm all for gun rights, However, these people took their guns and had the intention to use it. Most of the right wing, because the right wing would even shoot their own people during the coup and then blame it on the government, just to pretty much to call for a call of martyr. And they still use dirty tactics like that. In fact, during the 2014 protest against Hugo Chavez, or not Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro, because Chavez had already died, the Bolivian government, there was multiple times where that happened, and PSUV snipers were pretty much involved in a real counter-terrorist effort, because that's what has descended to the right wing of Venezuela. So these are, again, just the descendants of millionaires and billionaires, and the people that were supposedly disenfranchised during the when these oil companies lost their profits, because they no longer had a right to sell oil in Venezuela. It was all nationalized. It's all one, it's one section of the Bolivarian government that runs the oil trade now in Venezuela. And with using those profits, they were able to make many different social programs for the Venezuelan people, including education for all, housing, the main one, where they had to live in slums. Now there's these big towers that used to be full of slums, famous in Caracas, that are finally coming down because the Bolivian government has made it possible. And it's just great. Because it was just, these were like, these were just like the signs of the 90s tyranny, these big slum towers. As people got rich, it was kind of like the 50s scenario during the Batista dictatorship. It was like 90s Venezuela, where in the 50s, in Havana, you could be in a slum, and then 20 feet away from you is a sparkling casino where rich mobsters went to play, and all kinds of super rich would go. The Batista dictatorship was very similar to the Carlos Andrés Perez dictatorship of the 80s and 90s. Actually, he started in the 70s, and he got reelected in the 80s and 90s, and there was actually a breaks in there, but I call it all one era practice, because Carlos Andrés Perez was the most polarizing figure. He was just an icon of tyranny for Venezuelans, and he was actually around until very recently. He died like 5 years ago. I mean, this guy, just an evil old guy. Mainly, he was right there serving the pockets of the super rich of Venezuela, and people, I've seen the right wing try to say, he was trying to make Venezuela into from a developing country and move it further. However, during that time, Venezuela's economy sputtered horribly. There was mass problems of starvation, mass problems mainly with homelessness was one of the main problems that they had. Now they have programs for that. Transportation, I'm pretty sure, is all dealt with now. All kinds of stuff has been improved on, mainly the housing thing. Because they built many giant apartments, even small houses, all throughout Venezuela. Put what used to be homeless people in houses, and people are gonna say, well, this fucking comedy is on here on UCY radio, pretty much putting out or what's the famous line that ANCAPs use, and they have a lot of valid points at times when talking about the government, and it's a breach of power in the United States, but I feel like they don't have a lot of times a lot of experience talking with people from the third world like I do. Considering that I'm almost practically from Colombia, these people will say, well, this fucking statist is on here saying, well, look all these great things the government did. Well, I'm just putting out the facts. This is what happened. This is not the United States government. This is not a corporatist government. This is the opposite of that. And what? Okay, and then there's going to be, of course, the accusations of abuses of power towards the corruption and whatever. And yes, I would probably agree that there had been, like any government, some corrupt officials at times. But I think that most of the stuff is fabrications from the right-wing media, from Colombia's government. Accusations mostly along the lines, like they said, Diosdado Cabellos is a narco. Even sometimes, they'll say that even Maduro, they try to accuse him of being a narco trafficker, when it's really the United States government and the cartels and all these right-wing governments that are behind. Like Peña Nieto is really the main narco trafficker, but the United States government never calls him out because they're Peña Nieto, Harper, and Obama worked so closely together. Now it's Trudeau up in Canada, and I don't think anything's going to change with Trudeau. It's just going to be the further continuation towards the North American Union. And North America, the fascists, the three fascist governments, three fascist presidents are aligning with each other because they realize that South America is unified and it's not changing anytime soon. I think that they thought that 2015 was going to be rougher for the left wing in South America, but it wasn't as rough as they thought. I mean, it wasn't a perfect year for the left wing, considering that they took some pretty big losses, and we don't know the outcome of what's happened today. But remember, this is only a parliamentary election, which a parliamentary election is just not the presidential election. So no matter what, PSUV after today is still in charge of the government of Venezuela. Even if they don't have the parliament. Sure, they won't have as much power to do and to continue what has been done. and also, there's been many accusations also about there's just some of the stuff that's ridiculous what the right wing there has to say. The main one that they always say is, well, the lack of freedom of press, but I've already said how that is bullshit, because you'll see these Venezuelan officials and they have 20 mics up to their face, and most of them are foreign medias like Univision and stuff like that are definitely right-wing. No matter how just because they're pro-immigrant doesn't mean that makes them not right-wing. They are right-wing. Univision, all these Mexican media sources or whatever, and then it'll just be that one Mike Telesur, which is practically the only left-wing media in Venezuela. So now they're just debunking all the claims of the anti-Chavez movement, and there seems to be a lot of people that, even this truther movement, that talk badly about Chavez, and there's some that actually are awake and realize what he did in his 14 years of presidency from 1999 all the way up to 2013 when he died, which was a tragic event for South America, because he really was the face of the Bolivian government, Bolivian revolution, which is not just us in Venezuela, but it's also in Brazil, it's also was in Argentina and Chile, and was in Paraguay, and is in Bolivia, and is in Ecuador, kind of is in Peru, could be next in Colombia down the road, and was even in the smaller ones, like Suriname, and which is a Dutch-speaking country. I mean, it even transcends the language barriers. Guyana, and one more over there I'm forgetting. Guyana's Suriname. Actually, there's French Guyana, that's different. They're a French colony. It's kind of weird that the French still have a colony in South America, but yeah, that's how it works. And the Bolivian movement is almost able to retake what has been long a colony of the British, the Falklands, but recently things changed in Argentina. Macri from the right wing won, and now the right wing has taken charge of one of the strongest countries in South America, which I find really sad, because Argentina had a very bright future under the Kirchner government. They were very strongly anti-Zionist. They were going to work very strongly with putting in bricks, and then the people voted, about 53% of them, if it was not rigged, 53% of them voted to get rid of that and put in the right-wing government, which I just find so counterproductive. And now they're going to fall back to the point where they're in 2001, where it was run on the banks, these run on the banks where people couldn't even get their money. People went broke, had $100,000 in the bank. Well, guess what? It was gone. I think it's Argentine peso is actually what they use there. It was at that time they had like almost 10% abstract poverty, and like over half the country was in regular poverty. Now it's about like less than 2%, abstract poverty and less than 10% regular poverty. That number right there, I think, is lower than the United States number. Well, actually, of course it is. That just shows the progress that they were able to make in that time. And today, we had at the same time we had the French elections happened for Parliament. One round only happened, and we had in that election we had from Marine Le Pen she won like 6 out of 12 regions today, which I know it's not in any way connected to South America. Well, sort of is, because I actually told you they do have a colony in South America, which comes very little into play, but I just thought it was notable to talk about it because it's on the same day as what's going on in Venezuela. But Le Pen took 6 out of 12 regions, and also at the same time, that means that she also won the majority for the first round, so she leads after one round. And it's possible if she could win, with a parliament lead, that very much sets her up for potentially in 28, or actually I think it'd be either 2016 or it's either next year or 2017, I think, is when they have their election for president. Le Pen could win, which Le Pen I would say it's very bad actually for France, because Le Pen, she is pro-Russia, but that's completely a smokescreen, I think, and just to gain some supporters. The French people, she knows that the French people are so tired of the anti-Russia rhetoric by Hollande, but she is a right-wing fascist, which, at the same time, she supports the same very people that committed horrible actions. I mean, her and her party have downplayed or even at times supported the Axis powers that did horrible actions against East Europe and Russia. And that's not even really the worst thing, because let's go to something modern. She's very Islamophobic and would be very willing to create horrible wars in the Middle East and probably join in on Syria and Iran possibly. And also, she would say that she would actually increase prison capacity, which sounds just like, the people that support the prison industrial complex of the United States. And at the same time, she would enforce the law much stricter than has been in the past in France. So it sounds like really the rhetoric right of a fascist, and even at times the party has claimed to be fascist, I think, in the past. Now they try to soften their image. The National Front, also, they are pro-Israel. Let's not forget about that. Despite being leaning on fascist tendencies, not only that, probably you could say a fascist party, just like the West Ukrainian Nazis, they are pro-Israel, which sounds like a contradiction, but it really isn't. So it's really questionable. The only thing she really actually supports of the activist community is the work with Putin more, and that seems to be just purely a smokescreen. And yes, actually, she said she supported Ron Paul on the gold standard, but that was a while ago. And again, these parties seem to change. They're kind of like what happened with the West Ukrainian Party, Svoboda. They kind of softened their image and changed it a little bit when they actually got the power in West Ukraine. It's kind of like what I would think would happen with National Front in France, or what looks to be almost an inevitable Golden Dawn victory in Greece. But I think National Front winning France is very likely next week when they have the second round, and then possibly a Le Pen presidency in 2017 or 2018. I've been trying to get in this UCY chat for a little bit, but it's not letting me in. I don't know what's the deal here. That's weird. Anyways, it is Sunday here, Sunday night, Voice of Rebellion Radio. Hard to believe that, again, just like it seems like just a few weeks. I remember saying last year when I've aired Sundays since March 2014. So last year I had the same deal where I had to compete with the Super Bowl for ratings, which I mean, they're not usually the same audience, but sometimes I actually do lose a few listeners that week, and it's not that far away again. And I missed the Super Bowl, which when it happens, which I don't really care too much, but no, I almost have a tradition of watching it. But last year I didn't watch it for the most part, and I don't think this year I'm going to watch it because the radio does come more important than the game. But I've watched it for like 5 or 6 years. Not, and even when it's not even like a team I really like, mostly for the most part, just I don't know, people have food. people have junk food that I get an excuse to pick out on their junk food and go to somebody's house. You know, for a while there, I'd just go to my friend's house and they watched it still on like a 25-inch mega. You know, they have a box TV or whatever, and I would watch it every year on that. But it seemed like they had food and stuff, so I was just like, that's worth it. But when we're talking about South America, and I've talked to some of my real friends down there. I have, I would say that my buddy Nunez down there, that's the last name, who works as Voice of Rebellion Radio. We kind of collaborate. He's a news person for RNA News, which is a small news on Facebook. You should give them a like. I mean, they share our stuff quite a bit actually, and also they have I tried to. I don't know what exactly happened though. I think I had her added or something like that, and then I haven't seen her in a while. Nelly Gallo, who's also from, I think she's from RNA News. I don't know if she's also from Venezuela, but I talked to them and talked about all the things that have happened in the last 15 years, and especially when Buddy Nunez has lived. I mean, I think he's in his 50s or 60s. So he's seen a lot of stuff. He saw all the bad stuff that happened under the Perez dictatorship. Carlos Andres Perez did the Carazaco and killed 2,000 protesters in 1 month. He's seen a lot. He actually was there when it happened, and now just things have completely changed. And these right-wing protesters get treated so much more dignified than what the left-wing protesters did when they were in charge, and it's pretty much the same type of people. And there's a foreigner, Capriles Radonsky. Well, he's not a foreigner; he's actually Venezuelan, but he's the leader of the whole freaking opposition in Venezuela. The right-wingers. Capriles Radonsky runs it, which it's a question. It's like that says it right there. It's like somebody that's only partially Venezuelan actually is in charge of the right wing, kind of like how all these companies extorted Venezuela that weren't even Venezuelan, these American companies, whatever. But Radonsky is like the son of a Polish Jew or something like that. I don't know, that's bizarre. Capriles Radonsky, he doesn't even look that Venezuelan to me. And then sometimes the right wing has made the accusation. Well, they said Maduro wasn't even born in Venezuela. They say he was born actually in my country, Colombia, in Cucuta, Colombia, which really wouldn't even matter because that might as well be Venezuelan. If you're a Colombian, you know that Cucuta is a border town that might as well be Venezuela. In fact, people sometimes when they have something illegal that needs to be done or whatever that can't be done in Colombia, something like perhaps even a marriage or something like that. Like I think, for example, Colombia has marriage laws that say that they work Catholic marriage laws. If you can't get remarried in Colombia, or at least that's how it used to be. So a lot of people definitely, especially in the past, because I don't think that's a law anymore, but when they had, pretty much Catholic law in the Bogota government was instituted, people, if they need to get remarried, they would cross over through Cucuta and then go to Venezuela and get married over there, then come back with their marriage actually filed. And all kinds of stuff like that happened. But so the point is really roundabout is that I don't think it would even matter. And number two is that Capriles Radonsky also his opposition that he leads has many people that have called for American invasion of Venezuela. These people are this is the definition of treason right there. It's not people like me doing a radio podcast, in the United States. Some people say we're treasonous, or Snowden's treasonous, or whatever. But if you want to see treason against the country, it's when you are a third world country like that, like Venezuela, on its way up, and then you, as a person of power, call for the invasion by a much more powerful country that's been known to kill many civilians in battle and known to do nothing but steal, loot, pillage, burn for the Rothschilds and the United States military. When you call for their invasion on your country, that's treason right there. And there's definitely the right wing in Venezuela that's committed treason many times. Not necessarily Radonsky himself, but Radonsky has many of his own problems. Honestly, he made it. I remember he made a huge deal about when Maduro called him Americón, which if you speak a little bit of Spanish, you probably know that word. Maybe you were called by that by one of your Mexican coworkers or something. I don't know. That means it does loosely translate the fag. He did call Radonsky that. Mostly I'm pretty sure in an angry way. It wasn't like he was just saying that, and he wasn't saying that in the way he was saying. The context of it wasn't talking about actually how he's pretty much a confirmed bachelor. No, it was in the context that he's a loser, he's an asshole, he's a liar, and a Zionist. No, it was completely in that context. It was not in the context that he also is unmarried at like 40 years old, which that is a rumor that's why it did get taken out of context, I think, is because in the Venezuelan culture, it's rumored that Henry Capriles Radonsky, leader of the right-wing opposition, is gay, which also Maduro and Chavez have pretty much said that they don't care if that actually is the case. It's actually a fact that they've actually improved rights for people in same-sex relationships in Venezuela. But, of course, that's another front that's been infiltrated by the United States government and other foreign agents, is the LBG whatever group, the support, in support of gay rights in Venezuela. They've taken that in context and say, oh, look, our government's homophobic. The Bolivarian government needs to be replaced immediately. But they don't realize that they've even made improvements on that aspect, which to me is almost a non-political issue. It's a cultural issue. It's a somewhat religious issue, but it just doesn't, in politics, it's such on the back burner, and I think that a lot of these countries, it's only the United States they use that to distract people with. Every time there's a real issue about war, real issue about the Federal Reserve or something that comes up, they go to that issue and distract the people for 3 months talking about it. Anyways, I'm going to try to get in this chat room again. See what everybody... Oh, they got the thing on the UCUI website. They put all these programs up the top when you're trying to click on the little tab. And you can't, sometimes you end up clicking for an ad for another show. Okay, here we go. I got the chat launched. Anyways, I've talked enough about Venezuela. Let's talk about a little bit about the situation in. Let's talk a little bit about the situation that we had in Brazil. Is that it's a little bit different. The Bolivian government in Venezuela is a little bit different than the Brazilian government. The Brazilian government's a little bit more right wing, and they had a very strong economy for a while. But there's been some weakening of the economy recently, and we had in Brazil. There's been protests recently. I think that the Brazilian government has a lot more flaws than the rest of the South American governments, but I think that it can be resolved, and it's a lot less fucked than the United States government or a lot of the Western European governments. I don't think that they've been infiltrated by bankers because they actually are part of BRICS. I think that the problems are purely caused by a lot of foreign economic wars being played against Brazil, and at the same time, I think that they are just going through a period of economic stagnation. It's probably a lot of it's natural because Brazil, one of their big exports is gasoline, just like South America, and right now Saudi Arabia is selling gas super cheap. It's purely an effort. They're actually selling it below cost. That's why if you go to a pump in the United States, don't think Obama or whatever for the 195 gasoline. No, that's purely the Saudi Arabians selling it cheaply to the world, hoping to run Iran and Venezuela into a period of bankruptcy. That's their main two, and Russia, of course, that sells a ton of gasoline to everybody. I think that I think Russia is like one that might be the biggest exporter of oil in the world. I think that right now the Saudis have been doing this economic war probably for the last 9 months or so, probably since March, May, since that's when really the gas prices I know started to really drop. But the thing is that Iranian oil, Venezuelan oil, has not actually taken that big of a hit. In fact, if anything, the economy of Venezuela improved this year compared to last year. Last year was just a complete disaster, unfortunately, due to the sanctions, due to just also there was a lot of trust was lost in Venezuela because the world knows, the people know a little bit that Maduro, he might be the same intention as Chavez, but he doesn't have the same power, the same will that Chavez had, and I don't think he just has the charisma. I don't think he has the charisma that Chavez did. When you hear him speak, I mean, whenever I hear that one speech by Chavez, when he tells the Yankees, the United States government to get out, tell their ambassadors, to tell when he told the people from the United States Embassy in Venezuela to get out of the country, and he called them shit Yankees, loose translation. It was just, as somebody who speaks Spanish, it was just it's giving me chills listening to it. It's been 7 years later. He gave that speech in 2008, and that was before he got cancer and before. And, it's even been speculated, and I think that's possible, that the cancer was not natural. As there's all the usual attempts, all the stuff that was done to try to heal Chavez would have worked in most situations. But, however, he died anyways. And we found out that Israel was able to do a biological assassination with Arafat. It looks like there wasn't 100% confirmation, but they did find arsenic on him, not in the body, but I think it was like on his clothes or something like that. Arafat, and I think that's very possible that Chavez might have went that way too. I mean, the Venezuelan government is in a investigation right now. It could be 10 years before they find out. It took like 10 years before they got any lead on the Arafat thing. It's not closed to this day, which Arafat was the longtime Palestinian leader, which, as you know, Palestine is pretty much just a state in exile. As, yes, it's technically a state, but it's occupied by... But it's occupied by Israel, and it bombed constantly by Israel. And that's another thing. The Venezuelan government to this day has continued an anti-Zionist stance heavily, and so most of South America. That's one of the big things that changed, because in the past, during Operation Condor, when these fascist governments resided in South America, they were all pro-Zionist. They were all corporatist. It was a complete 180 practically happened within a matter of 20 years. From 1975, let's go 1980 compared to around 2000 to 2005. When it really hit a breaking point, because we had around that time we had the Bolivian government change. Morales was elected. We had Correa with 2007 was elected in Ecuador. We had what else? We had Kirchner. No, Kirchner was already in power. Kirchner took power like 2005 too, yeah. Lula had already been in power. But that's when it really almost all of South America was coated in anti-Zionist, anti-fascist government. And now it could be changing, unfortunately. I mean, I'm going to be real right now with the situation. That it looks like 50%. It's really just deadlocked, and it could go either way. A lot of the polls are actually showing that the right wing could win in Venezuela, which would be really unfortunate. But it's just a cycle of South American politics, isn't it? And this has happened twice or three times in some Central American countries, like Guatemala, for example. I'll show you an example. Guatemala, 1950s, they had Jacobo Arbenz. Jacobo Arbenz was in power for about 11 years, and after that, fascist dictatorship takes charge in 1964 with the United States military coup. It takes a long time before the people finally stand up to that, and I think like the 90s or 2000s when they actually elect another socialist government. Socialist government improves their lives, but eventually they voted out of power because the rich told them that they could get richer if they worked with them. Now they overthrow them this year because of the corruption that the fascist, well, not the fascists, but you could say that's fascist corporations. I mean, they'll oftentimes say democracy or republic or whatever, but as we see in the United States, it's a lie, and it's another fascist oligarchy. But they overthrew it, and now we possibly are at the cycle where they could have early elections or in transition period, and then they could have another socialist government. And so I'd say that they'll change again, and they'll go through the cycle one more time or twice. Anyways, I checked out the chat. Going back through, trying to see if there's any questions through here. I saw some stuff talking about it, about how I saw something about how some people can believe Obama would send $50 billion to open Nazi supporters, which is not surprising whatsoever, because in fact, some real civil rights leaders, not talking about Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton, that are just tools for the rich and are hijacked the new civil rights movement. I'm talking about like Colonel West or whatever. They'll call this guy a house slave all day long, and he's just another person. He's just a half black person that is now the corporate spokesman of America, aka the president, and will now be subservient to the Rothschilds and subservient to the elite. That's how it works. The president doesn't have any real power, anyways. It's the Rothschilds that ultimately run this country. They run the Federal Reserve, and they run they run most of the money all throughout the world, practically. There's just a few countries, and you see them constantly going through an ideological and economical war against them, like what has happened in South America. Almost the whole continent takes a stand against them, and then you see what they try to do. They try to put coups, or as they would say, south of the border, golpe de Estado. I almost find that a better word, coup, because coup is a French word, and for most people, they don't even know what that word means. It's like attack against the state is what that's how it translates. Coup in Spanish to golpe de Estado. So I think that almost a better word, because most of the time it's an infiltration, it's a subversion is what a coup is. It's an ugly thing. And the United States has been famous for supporting them through Chile, the Iran, all throughout the Cold War. They did coups left and right. It's coups very rarely are actually popular, supported by the people. I mean, you could argue that the 2013 one in Egypt, that was a different story. That was after the Egyptian revolution had already taken place against Mohamed Morsi. Or it was actually the second Egyptian revolution. And yeah, I saw somebody. I responded to that one guy. Talk about Jesse Jackson, Sharpton. There's just so many of these people that are, go to Ferguson or whatever, and go to these. They'll pretend to stand up for black, the new civil rights movements. How it's true that we haven't gotten to full equality, and to some extent, and they will try. They say that they support these people, the families of Michael Brown, stuff like that, and then they go to, they go to these events. But Jesse Jackson, he got kicked out of Ferguson. I laughed at when I heard about that because that's Jesse. I mean, because finally people woke up that and Al Sharpton, come on, he's on MSNBC. If you're on MSNBC or any major news network with a TV show, this day and age, you're a sellout. They booted off everyone probably around 2008 or 2009 that was any bit revolutionary leaning. They had Radigan, who actually did call for a revolution on air. I remember that, and he got fired 6 months after that. And all the other ones got kicked off, and then they replaced it with fucking Rachel Maddow, Rachel Maddow, all she does is pretty much denounce people like me, and then she compares all of us to Alex Jones and uses Alex Jones constantly to say that we're all like him, and it's funny because I saw her the other day. She was talking about the San Bernardino shooting and saying that was possibly a false flag, or this guy, the lawyer of the family of the supposed shooters that are defending, just making sure the family doesn't get any, why they hire a lawyer in that circumstance, just make sure they don't get any death threats or anything like that, and they have legal representation in any circumstance. But whatever, this lawyer was saying, he had a very justified argument. I'm saying by that, he was very clean with it. He wasn't saying anything too nutty. He was very calm and collected and just delivered the speech that he had. But Rachel Maddow, makes it just really mocks the person. And Rachel Maddow goes into a crazy rant. I mean, she looked like the one that was crazy. So she actually did a service to us truthers by making the mainstream media look nuts, and us truthers look like the sane, calm, collected people that most of us are. I can't say I'm calm, collected all the time. I mean, some of the people that have listened to my radio show for the last 2 years, they know that sometimes I've gotten irate on the air. But yeah, this guy's telling me it was actually, they booed him off the stage when he tried to pass the Christian plate Jackson and Ferguson. Yeah, that's all that people like Jesse Jackson are in. Go to these events like Ferguson or whatever, the protest, solidarity protest. They're just trying to get money and try to get. At this point, they use the new civil rights movement in order to justify, all the money they get and just make all these movies or whatever and these little ill-fated campaigns or whatever that they do, and all these little projects. These people are millionaires. Jesse Jackson's a millionaire. Remember, he actually was trying to become one of the part of the establishment. Remember, 80 or 84, he tried to run for president. They tried to run for he tried to run for president. Didn't work out, and I forgot who in 84, who actually, of course, Reagan was selected to be the elite president, but I don't know who the Democrats nominated. But it doesn't matter because but it doesn't even matter because the elite continued to win. In fact, the 80s was really a bad. That's really where the elite agenda was pushed forward in many things. Like example, the Middle Eastern agenda, where they really started these wars in the Middle East, and that's where they funded the Mujahideen, which later turned into Al Qaeda, Al Nusra, ISIS, Taliban, just almost every terrorist group imaginable that exists in the Middle East that is controlled by the United States government to this day was started by the Mujahideen, which Reagan and actually before him Carter funded way back, in the 70s. And really the anti-Muslim rhetoric when I talked about using these terror groups that the government funds, the government uses them to justify hatred, towards the Middle Eastern region as a whole and to Muslims over there, and we should bomb the hell out of it. Really kind of that rhetoric started really what you think about the 60s, 70s, really after those Israelis got shot up in their hotel by the Palestinians. And I was looking also, and somebody mentioned, because I'm trying to keep it a little bit interactive because I have a lot more to say. However, I said I would do an interactive part. The Zapatistas, I want to talk about a little bit, is that, let's veer back onto the South America topic. Yeah, the Zapatistas are very interesting, and I actually, I had my co-host there I still have him. However, he's kind of on a hiatus right now. A CP Libre from Mexico. And, they are pretty much reside in southern Mexico. They are a revolutionary movement against United States imperialism, against Zionism. pro-native also. They support the native people native to Mexico, the descendants of the Incas and the Mayas, and they actually more Mayas. Is Mayas Aztecs? The Incas prefer the South. Never mind. I should know that because the Incas reside in Colombia and all that, and down in South America. However, they actually kind of nowadays they kind of guard, from what I understand, they kind of almost control some of the Indian land, or actually native land, I should say, down in southern Mexico, down by the Yucatan. But they've been dormant for a long time. I'm wondering if soon they need to come out of hiding because the Peña Nieto government is just out of control. They after the 43 Ayotzinapa kidnappings, which I did a show on, this should be their time to shine, and they should show up to Mexico City armed with the protesters and demand not only the resigning of Peña Nieto, but the resigning of the entire Mexican government, and they need to kick out all the Mexican officials that have been corrupt in working with the United States and all United States influence. It just needs a complete reboot. The corporate system, it's been a corporate government for a long time, and this is the time for the Mexican people I think they're about to do a revolution in Mexico, but this is the time for the Zapatistas to shine. And this is the time for a successful revolution. Because remember, the Zapatistas were the same ones way back to the 19-teens. They fought against the United States-supported dictatorship, just kind of like the same scenario now with Sanchez. And this is Peña Nieto. Peña Nieto is the new Sanchez of is the new Sanchez of Mexico. And he's a cocky dictator. He actually used to be a soap opera star for a long time, and that just shows. And a lot of people support him, unfortunately, in Mexico, and it just shows that a lot of people have been brainwashed by Telemex and all these other. I'm pretty sure they have Univision, the major media source down there in Mexico. Even though it is an American media source, people get that confused. Sometimes people think Univision is foreign just because they broadcast in Spanish, but it's an American news station that broadcasts in Spanish out of Miami. And they lie a lot of times. I mean, I've seen them pressuring, like, example, they pressured Tyreek Sub, who was he just laid out the facts. I mean, they lost. That's one of the times where the mainstream media lost. Because, like, I've seen them, they were trying to pressure him into, giving a bad answer, and he gave a perfect answer every time. And then at the end of the argument between him and the reporter, he had a face like he lost. He just knew that he lost after that. But anyways, going back to Mexico, they have a lot of corrupt media just like we do. In fact, it's dominated by corrupt media. And a lot of people do support Peña Nieto, but a lot of people have woken up. And, they also do get a chance to, because they speak Spanish, to watch all this uncorrupted media from countries like Venezuela, Bolivia, all throughout South America. There's another thing is that as activists here in the United States that speak, the people that speak only English, I mean, we do get our few RT and whatever, but we don't get nearly a plethora of information from all these other ones, true medias that don't do English broadcasts. I've seen many from South America. There's just plenty but there's plenty from all around the world. However, it's only really the major ones that actually take the time to broadcast identical stories in Spanish or in English and other languages. I got this UC1. What happened to UCY channel? Some bleep thing. Okay. Oh, these UCY chat people. I mean, I was talking in some weird code or something. I never really took too much time to do an interactive show because I usually have callers and that's how I interact with the audience. But it looks like there's gonna be a lot of shows like this because I don't have a co-host to a co-host to take the calls. However, I still try to interact with the audience a little bit, and because it is a 2-hour show, and it's not like I don't come on from here because I still have plenty to talk about. Because I mostly just concentrated this show on Venezuela only. Talk a little bit also about Ecuador, and I talked a little about Mexico, but Ecuador isn't. I think that in a way Rafael Correa has kind of taken he has almost, because Maduro has been not the person that he didn't really take the face of the Bolivian revolution. I think it's been passed over to Ecuador and to Rafael Correa somewhat. Rafael Correa is kind of like the more clean-cut version of Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez, of course, was a working man that went through the military academy in the 70s. He rose up through the military ranks, trying to even gain a lot of supporters. It was known that he was left-wing since at least 92 when he did a left-wing coup against the attempted to do one against the Venezuelan government, and that's where, due to the rampant corruption in the Perez dictatorship, and then he was put in jail for a couple of years, and he was actually pardoned, probably it was the Perez dictatorship, but it was actually had been passed on to it was already a different leader, but it was the same. That whole era is called Funtojísimo, I think that's the name of it, and Funtojísimo is the era from 1950 to from 1959, when there was actually when it used to be before that just military strongmen used to run Venezuela. That point in between that to the Chavez government, and it was just them trying to hold on to the power that they were inevitably going to lose when they had the 98 elections. Chavez took power in 1999. And then for the last 15 years has been in power, the Bolivian government facing only, let's say, they faced election in 99 or 98. They got elected. Chavez got reelected in 2000. He got elected again in 2006. He got elected again in 2012. All with popular votes. And let's also remember that this is not like the American electoral system. And I'll explain you one thing major that's different. Is that you get a receipt every time you vote there. There's no way they can manipulate, at least locally, the election results. Because then when they do release the election results, people can be like, wait a minute, they start conferring. And I was like, I have this vote. Wait a minute, only I voted. It's like I voted for this party, and then all of a sudden they realize, wait, these election results don't add up. They have it, and they have electronic and a paper vote. Number two is that it's been observed by both right and left wing sources all around the world, and they all say that it's really not too. There's really no way that it could be fraud in it. It's one of the most open elections on the planet. And usually I don't support elections. But this is a little bit different. This isn't the Western world, for one thing. Yes, in West Europe, United States, I take everything with the fact that it's most likely rigged. France, like, for example, this French parliamentary elections, I don't even really want to talk about them too much because the result looks ugly, for one thing, if Le Pen takes power, because she's a Zionist. Let's face it, I know some people think that she's a little bit different because she's not as harsh on Russia. I think that's just a smokescreen, just to get some support, because the French people don't want to. They don't want this Cold War with Russia. They don't want to be near the Iron Curtain or whatever. They don't want to be in that split Europe again. But the French. So I think that's just a tool that a lot of politicians are going to use in West Europe in the next few years. Is that I'm going to work with Russia, but in the long run they screw Russia after they actually get elected. This is a campaign promise that they won't keep. And they'll end up working with the rest of the Western elite in order to demonize Russia. And also, I just don't want to talk about the French parliamentary elections too much because I don't think that it really matters. I think ultimately those are probably rigged. And I just read something in the chat room. We needed this info. We are dumb gringos. I don't think too many people. I mean, it is true that there's a lot of hostility down there in Venezuela to so many Americans because of the recent events that have happened. We've had down there in Venezuela, the United States government just attempted to do another coup in 2015 that was foiled. They did a coup in 2002 that was foiled a little bit late, and then they had hundreds died on the streets by the right wing. The right wing were killing off their own people, blamed on the government. I mean, these people, and then they would even go on the media and they manipulate the footage and say, look at these Chavez protesters shooting us on unprovoked. And then if you took the whole video, it was actually them shooting back, at the right-wing protesters after they've already been shooting at them. Because the right-wing protesters, they were there, and they weren't even protesters. A lot of these people were paid by big corporations. They're probably paid right by the oil companies that were trying to get back in business. They probably take the little bit of money that they were going to give these people because these people are poor, a lot of them, pay them $5 and they go out on the street and with a pistol ready to shoot somebody. I bet the oil companies probably paid some of these right-wing protesters too directly. And they definitely paid these people in 2015. They didn't even have to pay them. They're just a bunch of spoiled rich kids that are mad because they didn't get hot water in their jacuzzi or something, And then did a woman bash, I got this question, did a woman bash Nicolas Maduro on the head with a mango? I didn't hear about that, but I tell you that, yeah, it's possible, but just by the fact that imagine if somebody bashed Obama in the head with a mango, which I don't think would actually, I don't know, mangoes aren't that common in the United States, but I'm just saying, she might have been shot in the United States. I'm pretty sure that lady probably in Venezuela wasn't even arrested or probably was let go the next day if that actually happened. I never even heard of that happening, but I can tell you Maduro probably laughed it off. Probably were. I mean, remember that guy that threw the shoes at Bush, not even in their own country, in Iraq, the Iraqi guy that threw the shoes at Bush? That guy spent like 5 years in jail. That's how serious American officials take themselves. Which I thought, and it looked like Bush almost looked like he was going to be a dick about it. He laughed it off when he dodged it. And I'm like, if I was president, I probably would have laughed it off and just been like, look at those moves or whatever. I probably would have some line right after lined up. The price to get a protester or shoot someone went up $10 now. Yeah, because they're not as poor anymore. Because the Bolivian government helped them out, and that's the funny thing. These people that got directly helped out, some of them turned their backs on Maduro and Chavez recently. I mean, there was even like a picture, I think, with some guys with tablets that they only could afford because the Bolivian government had helped them out, and they had like the big right-wing party logo on it. I'm like, oh, that's ironic right there. And woman who hit Venezuelan leader with mango rewarded with new home. See? I told you. I told you that she got rewarded with the new home because it probably was a stressful day, and they probably probably lightened the mood a little bit with Maduro. You probably, as a leader, I wouldn't shit like that. I mean, only American leaders, they take themselves really seriously, but yet at the same time, at the end of the day, they're sucking Rothschild's cock. And these people actually are the leader of something. They're the leader of a country. They're not bowing down to anybody financially. They aren't bowing down to the New World Order at the end of the day. But they don't take themselves that seriously. They realize they're fucking humans. And I think that's what really Chavez really resembled. That he was the president of a country, but at times he just seemed like one of the other guys in Venezuela. Seemed like somebody else's uncle, dancing during the rallies. I mean, remember that in 2012, he had cancer when he was doing that. He was so vibrant, he was so alive, this guy. He reminded me of, somebody in my family or something, And then when I found out he croaked, it was just that was pretty sad. I think that was really sad for a lot of South Americans. I mean, Colombian is almost not allowed to be sad after that because in Colombia they have even my own family brainwashed all by Colombian media. They paint out Venezuela to be they're so contradictory too because they say, oh, they're suffering, but actually they're taking advantage of us. What? Wait, what? And then they'll talk about. And then first it's like they're taking advantage of the Venezuelan people, but we hate the Venezuelan people. Wait a minute, what? It's like, who do we hate? Do we hate the Venezuelan government or the Venezuelan people? Should we support them? And then it's so convoluted. The media there uses convoluted, just at times, just crazy, really, how the media works. And it's funny because I'll tell you one thing: is like there they scare people all the time. Their media is full with fearful. If somebody jerks off to being scared, they should watch Colombian media because it's just like stuff like, look, we're gonna get robbed. Here's a video of people in Bogota getting robbed. And it'd be like the most obviously fake video of somebody getting robbed. It's obviously like a reenactment of something happening. But they didn't say that. They presented it like it was real footage. And then every time I laugh because it would be like the guy would be like slapping him or something like that, and that's enough for him to like get to the ground, and then he takes his car or something. Like it's just hilarious for me watching it because especially when I watch RT, that's real footage, that's real news, and then compared to theirs, it might have been worse than our media when it comes to that kind of stuff. The videos they were playing, shit, that was the most. That was fakey. That was worse than the Universal Orlando ride. We got plus like an hour, well, less than an hour left of the show. We have, Correa down there in Ecuador. He got elected about 8 years back. I'm trying to remember what happened. I was pretty little, but I remember just it happening. And then Correa, he kind of he's the clean cut Chavez. He actually went to Harvard for 8 years, but he definitely doesn't take any for example, he's not right wing like somebody that you would think would have went to Harvard. But he's just as left wing as Chavez or any of those people down in South America. And that's the thing, he actually really resembles Chavez. But the one thing I have to criticize Ecuador about is that they seem to be refusing to give up that U.S. dollar, which I know it's because of the big economic consequences that would happen once it happened, because our economy's been set up on that for 60 years. It goes way back to when they had probably some fascist dictatorship in Ecuador. I don't even know what kind of government ran Ecuador back then. I can tell you Bolivia, Brazil, during Operation Condor, Bolivia, Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Venezuela, Cuba, before Castro, Chile, I'm pretty sure, at one point, of course, Panama, talk about these fascist, that's one, there's all these fascist dictatorships that were controlled, and I'm pretty sure Ecuador, they were under direct U.S. influence, and they had the dollar, and now their economy's been built on that for a long time. They're about to get rid of the dollar. I know that, but it's been already 8 years it took them. I mean, Rafael Correa, I think, could take the face of the movement, especially because right now there's kind of an absence because Chavez is gone. Maduro, as a leader of Venezuela, I think would naturally take the position. However, it's not really possible because Maduro's just not as strong. He's kind of a weak leader, unfortunately. He has good intentions, but just doesn't have the Chavez factor. Chavez factor is a unique thing. Just by watching his speeches and stuff like that, or like when he talked bad about the Zionists, his power that he was, and passion that he had. Maduro was a bus driver at one point. Back in the 80s, that's what he did. Then he became a bus union leader. He slowly crept through the power ranks. Eventually, he actually became he got into a government position, became vice president, and Chavez picked him last minute to succeed him. Well, he picked him as pretty much the socialist candidate in the election if they needed a special election, which they needed in a special election because the Venezuelan Constitution says that within 1 year, if a president dies 1 year into their term, or less than 1 year into their term, there'll be a special election, and the vice president does not naturally succeed. So that's actually something that even the United States doesn't have, where they don't have natural succession there if the vice president, if the president dies unexpectedly. Well, Chavez, or just dies in general. Chavez died not so unexpectedly, but it was unexpected at the time of the election. He was clear of cancer. That's what was so bizarre about it, is that, about the whole situation with Chavez getting sick, is that they told him that, he told everybody that he was clear of cancer, and I believe he did believe that. But I think the truth was that was no ordinary cancer. And there was no general area where it existed. It actually was prostate cancer. And that's what's weird. Prostate cancer killed him in a matter of about 2 or 3 years, which, if you know anything about in that kind of field, is that prostate cancer doesn't usually kill people, especially not in their 50s, so quickly. That's usually a very long 10, 20-year disease. And Chavez, suppose, but I think that was because it was more on the lines of poison, possibly. And there was a lot of people said so more Maduro said something. They have an investigation going on. I think we're going to find out. Might be 10 years down the road, but they'll leak it one day that Chavez was at least given something to worsen his condition, which made his fight with cancer harder. He went to Cuba. The best doctors in the world are in Cuba. A lot of times they come to the United States or whatever. But most of the time they're pretty glad actually to do medicine down there in Cuba, because they're not really worried about the money. These doctors are different. Here in the United States, yeah, we're talking about corporate whores that get to their knees whenever they hear more big pharma money to give people some pills. And there's just a pill for everything in the United States. But that's a whole different story. I'm about to go into some rant about that, about how the big pharma will sell you everything. Oh, you get mild, I don't know. Oh, you have trouble pissing? Here's a pill for that. Oh, the pill causing you the piss gave you a headache. Oh, here's another pill for the headache. Oh, the pill for the headache shrunk your dick. Okay, here's a pill to make it bigger. Oh, the pill for the pill for that gave you back problems. Here's another pill for that. Oh, the pill for that caused you to shit profusely. Oh, here's another thing for that. Oh, that caused you to sweat profusely. Here's another pill for that. No, I can't. Cuba, it's medicine is not about profit, and they are very good. They have the best medical system in the world for really with the lack of money that they have. And also, I saw somebody asked about Kirchner. Kirchner, she got voted out. Well, her government got voted out. She retired, and her successor was going to would run the country. They had the election, but they fucking voted in the right wing, U.S. supported guy, Zionist supported guy, anti-Russian guy, and the elections they failed at, unfortunately. And that was just a few weeks ago. It was November. And now we have this election that's going on. I'm about to give everybody a live update soon. I have to search. I'm going to ask a couple of the people that are directly connected, the people on the ground down there, which I do have those people. I was supposed to Skype call with somebody down there. Somebody that not lives down there, but press TV reporter that's down there for the weekend. I think he's coming back after the elections. Caleb Malkin, maybe you're familiar with him. But I missed that. Anyways, he was going to Skype me early in the election. He wouldn't be able to tell me much about the actual results, just kind of the process a little bit, which I already get kind of how the process works. As I told you, and I know all the rules about the Venezuelan system, which is kind of surprising because I'm not Venezuelan, really. I have a little connection. I have like a cousin or something that lives there. But I don't have too much connection. I've never been there. I wanted to go there. Family never let me go there. Said I was going to get lynched or something like that. I don't know. I think I was going to get lynched. That would probably happen in Colombia or something like that. That place is crazy. But and the picture somebody sent of Kirchner. I mean, she does. I mean, I know she's like almost 60 years old or whatever, but she sure was a hottie back when she was young. She still doesn't have. She's not the worst looking woman now, but and that's why the left wing didn't make it. They should have just kept her running until she got old, and then she's got a hot daughter or something. Put her in after that. I don't know. But she was actually not really supposed to be the president at any point of Argentina, because before her was her husband, but her husband got cancer just like Chavez, and was one of the. There was like 9 South American leaders that got cancer at the same time, but Kirchner, he got cancer and died like Chavez. He was the first one to go. In 2010, he died. He wasn't president at the time, but he already kind of gave up the presidency because he was sick, and Kirchner took over. His wife took over, and he died in 2010, and just a little over about 2.5 years later, because that was October 2010, and March 2013, Chavez dies. And that was in March. That was only. I mean, I can't believe that was 2.5 years ago now. It just seems like it was like yesterday. And I'm, as you know, I'm a very young host. But and so 2.5 years is everybody else is like, yeah, that was practically yesterday. It was not that long ago. But somebody like me, when you talk about, wow, that was less than 3 years ago. It seems that close to now, well, than 2.5 years ago. It's kind of surprising. But I remember, I found out about it, and I was like, oh, shit, now what's going to happen to Venezuela now? And I was so glad to see Maduro won, in April 2013. He won by like 1.5%, which the right wing wouldn't even recognize the results. But and then the United States media was saying that they wouldn't recognize, they weren't recognizing the results or whatever. But like most American politicians win by that percentage, which it doesn't matter really because our elections, of course, are obviously rigged. But that's it just shows. It goes to show you the hypocrisy of the American media. We're today's election means a lot. If it goes badly, we're talking about. We're talking about I say it just goes down an ugly route is what mainly happens because the MUD takes power. They run the parliament. They could call a recall referendum, and then the recall referendum could easily be manipulated. In fact, they tried to manipulate a recall referendum against Chavez in the early 2000s that failed. It appears that they could do that again. They could try to do that again in 2016 or whatever if they take all the parliament. And what I'm more worried about is the fact that they could try to do an internal parliamentary coup or something like that, or do a real coup at this point. There's so many results, and their intentions seem to be clearly to make the government fall in Venezuela. The MUD it's a nefarious organization. They are not looking out for the good of anybody. In fact, their leader, Henry Capriles Radonsky, said, "Pobres son un mierda," which that means the poor people are shit. That's how they see them. They just see them as clay that they can mold in order to justify their return to power, because these are pretty much just the descendants of the right wing of the 90s and the 80s that got some Venezuelans super rich, and now they're trying to take power again. And now if they do it again, guess who's going to come back? Exxon, Mobil, Shell. Look, it's Hess now. All these different corporations come back to. All these different corporations will come back to Venezuela, and then nationalizing the oil was one, and just nationalization of the resources. Nationalization of the resources. It's just caused a lot. It's been a great step in Venezuela, and just they've done this all throughout South America. But the return of corporations taking all their pretty much doing what they've done to Africa for a long time, and then recently when Gaddafi got killed, that was kind of the end of possibly the end of United Africa, gold dinar all across Africa. Finally the complete end of the Rothschilds' exploitation of Africa. And that's what South America's practically been able to do. But if Venezuela falls, this is kind of a bad dominoes towards the Rothschilds taking over South America again. And like they did in the 70s and 80s, in the right wing taking over again. And the person that was behind Chavez, who I just got this question in the chat, was directly the United States, most likely. They deny any involvement, but it looks like the Bush government was definitely highly behind it. And also, the media was heavily behind it, because the media was calling for the assassination of Chavez on live television. They were spreading all kinds of stuff. The oil CEOs that had lost their profits started telling the media to say stuff like, "Oh, Chavez is a communist. Chavez is a dictator. Kill Chavez. Chavez eats babies." I don't know. Well, Chavez. What else? What else would they say? They said, of course, Chavez is corrupt. Chavez is a drug trafficker. All this kind of bullshit. And the old media was ran by right-wingers, was pretty much the same people that run our media, and only one was state television. And then they used the media to coordinate the coup. They would come on TV in the morning and say, "Okay, today we're going to clash today we take power, of the country back or whatever. They pretty much, it was April 11th, 2002 in Caracas, and they sent out a big clash. They told the right wingers to go out there and pretty much out there with guns and just be ready to shoot people, any left wingers, government officials, whoever. And then the left wingers came back and they defended themselves and they had a counter rally. But then it ended up with the right wing opening fire on the left wing counter rally. The left wing counter rally starts shooting back at the right wing counter rally, or not counter rally, the rally, and then that ends up with they continue their bullshit by saying, look, they were killing us in cold blood or whatever on the streets of Caracas. They were using the media, and then it got more people probably behind them. And then what happened was some of the military turns on Chavez. But he didn't lose the paratroopers, which comes vital a little bit later in the story. Chavez apparently vacates his presidential office and the mayor of Flores Palace for a little bit. He runs to Maracay just to reorganize the return of power. And then they bring in this guy, an oil executive, Pedro Carmona, who is living in Colombia in exile. Should be dead, in my opinion, or actually not dead. Life in prison would be better for his fate, but he is sworn in quotations. He has no legal justifications to be sworn in as the Venezuelan president with the help of the military and their corrupt of the right wingers on the streets, and also the I think some corrupt congressmen. Well, they have National Assembly. Assemblymen, which didn't even believe in the National Assembly because immediately they dissolved the National Assembly, giving pretty much all power goes shortly to this right-wing alliance that took power for 2 days only. And they didn't really take power because Chavez was still president. He just had moved the capital pretty much to Maracay for 2 days, came back, and yes, there was and somebody asked, the military was divided. Yes, the military had a right-wing part that turned against Chavez, but a lot of it was the left-wing part, and they had the paratroopers save Chavez because they come into Caracas. It was a giant protest of 1 million people literally coming at telling the right-wingers to get out of the palace in Miraflores. Chavez comes back in a helicopter heroically with the paratroopers clear out everything. A lot of soldiers did die just trying to defend the country. And yeah, then he comes back. The paratroopers clear out the right wingers. They clear they have guys inside the palace. The left wing had their guys inside the palace. The right wing didn't know about it. They cleared out. The right wing scurries away. They're already gone. This is late Sunday night, April 13th, 2002. Chavez comes back late at night, around midnight. I think it was like 3. It was later than that. Does a heroic speech. Then takes power again. He gets and Pedro Carmona is forced to run to Colombia. Few of the other people, they all scurry away. They're all practically pardoned afterwards, which that's a lot of people say in Venezuela. That's one of the biggest mistakes by Chavez was the pardoning of people that tried to that didn't just try. They did cause murder and mayhem on the streets and tried to give power back to the 1%. Not even the 1%, the 0.001% of the country. Yeah, and that was true. The paratroopers, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily special forces at times, because think about it, we do have, in the United States military, for example, just practically anybody can go to air assault school and they become a paratrooper. But yeah, these people were, I think, kind of elite soldiers in Venezuelan military. And then, yeah, the people was the main thing, because even if they, for example, the military continued to hold the palace and these people refused to leave, what were they going to do? There was 1 million people outside their door literally waiting to stomp down the door and come in and take the palace for themselves if necessary. Most likely would have happened. The media, yeah, also the media, I think they even hijacked all kinds of TV stations and forced, you would just be watching whatever regular program and they'd come on the TV, the right wing, and say, bring their message or whatever and directing people what to do. And they pretty much, it was a complete coup because it was, they acted, there was just some point on April 11th or April 12th where the right wing believed that they had where they believed they were in power and tried to tell the people that they were now in power. This is what you're going to do. And I got another question. And now the military tanks. Yes, there was the part that was, again, I think there was also regular military tanks that also came back. It was a split military between the left and the right on that weekend. And it was literally, like, imagine that. That must have been a crazy weekend. Friday, you come home from work or whatever, and then you see there's been big clashes on the street. People have been shot. A right wing has shot multiple, has killed somewhere around 100 people possibly on the streets of Caracas. People are dead on both sides. The Chavez supporters are forced to defend themselves. Second thing that happened, all of a sudden you see your TVs flipping on and off between them instructing, more violence against the Chavistas and the Bolivian government. All of a sudden you wake up Saturday morning, you see this strange guy, the former oil executive Pedro Camana, getting sworn in as president, not really explaining what happened to Chavez. Chavez is now reorganizing the return of power in Maracay. And then this continues. The National Assembly, they say, is being dissolved. All this crazy stuff is happening. You see tanks all throughout the streets. You can't leave your house. You have the military. There's a divide in the military. They're fighting each other. And then April 13th, you see, all of a sudden, this is the evening of April 13th, they're vacating. It appears that the Chavistas are about to take power. Momentum swings in their direction, and then before you go to sleep, they go to work Monday, which you probably figure you're not going to work Monday after all that crazy stuff happened. Chavistas have the Chavistas have taken power, and Chavez is back in power that night. Gives a speech back in the middle of the night. Which he practically just went back to normal. In fact, it was a really, Chavez did his own did the Allo Presidente, which was a TV show that he did every Sunday in the morning. It would have been kind of cool if he did it Sunday in 9 Eastern time, but he did it every morning. He had you take callers from regular people. Sometimes it'd be just over their, disputes with maybe a landlord or something like that, and he would actually try to give his advice, or even, sometimes he would even step in and intervene personally on some events, where, usually siding with, often these people were very poor that that would call in, and he even take personal notes from people. That's how personable the president he was. And it wasn't like, and I don't think the calls were screened as much like, imagine if we just had that event. I mean, I think the last president to even do anything sort of like that was FDR, with the fireside chats, but that was so much different. But Allo Presidente, he did this for like 30 minutes every morning, or not every morning, every Sunday morning, and all the way to 2012. And then that next, he did a pretty cool show the next week. In fact, if you get a chance, you can check out some of those shows he did. Check out or you can look up that specific show he did on October. That would have been, April 13th, so it was just April 20th. I guess he didn't get to do it that week because crazy shit was going on. The coup was happening. But the next week, April 20th, 2002. And then also, not too shortly after that, he denounced Bush, calling him a donkey and then calling him a drunk, and just all kinds of names. I mean, it was hilarious. But he really called him out. Talked about the Iraq War. This was in 2000, shortly after the Iraq War happened, just about a year after the coup. And it was a famous 3-minute rant that he goes on about George Bush. You can check. And, you can check that out on YouTube as well. I mean, just check out all the speeches if you haven't gotten the chance to. It's late in the show already. It's already. Now we're going on the timeline of Venezuela right now. It's 11:10 Eastern time right now. So it should be the poll should be closed and almost everything down. I'm going to give you a live update, which I actually have to look it up on the internet right now. Don't mind, I'll I'm going to turn that off from that keyboard sound. I know that's picking up on the mic, and it's probably really loud. Oh, I can't find it. Okay, well, here you go. Yeah, it doesn't look like we got any up-to-date stuff about any results or anything like that at this moment. Hopefully we get some results in the next 15 minutes or something like that. I don't know, somebody mentioned that UN speech. The UN speech was something different, but yeah, that was it. That was in 06, actually, where he pretty much calls Bush, he refers to him as Satan, pretty much, and says, yeah, that smell like sulfur. Like, the exact words, I sort of remember, I could almost recite it in Spanish, but yeah, it was right before the UN. Everybody laughed almost in the UN. Even people that were like hardcore supporters of Bush, I think, were laughing. I think the U.S. was like bacon for that speech, of course. But it was pretty just a funny. And then the thing, remember, he does the cross because he thinks really like acting like Satan was there the day before. Ayer estuvo el diablo. Sí, ahora huele el azufre. Don't mind if my Spanish isn't exactly the best. I do speak Spanish, but I have to like turn it back on. It doesn't exactly come back to me immediately. Like, if I talk, especially after a radio show, there's a lot of English and then back to Spanish. It doesn't exactly turn back on that quickly. We are in the final. We're in the final 20-ish minutes of the show. Let's talk a little bit about. Let's go to another. Everything that's happened in South America. We've had, the pink tide happen. That's what other people, that's what sometimes people call this whole swing to the left that South America's taken. In Paraguay, you also had Fernando Lugo for a long time, and he was a former preacher in Paraguay who became president of the country after a long right-wing dictatorship. And then Fernando Lugo, he did a lot of progress there in Paraguay, a long-time poor country, in the wake of a 35-year dictatorship of Alfredo Stroessner, who was kind of like, Alfredo Stroessner was almost like a foreigner practically. His father was like German, and his mother was also European, I think. And he became the dictator for 35 years of Paraguay, a fascist dictatorship, disappeared a lot of people. It acted just like Pinochet. And, and he was there at the same time as Pinochet, and way before Pinochet, and even all the way to he was there for like 20 years before Pinochet and went all the way through Pinochet's tenure as leader. That means that he was there just a long fucking time, 35 years, as a leader of Paraguay. And then after that, the Paraguay was in very bad poverty. There had just been the wake of a dictatorship. But within about 10, 15 years later, Lugo becomes president. And then he starts to change things around, does the same thing like Chavez did, social programs, use the national resources for the good of the people, and cut out corporations. But guess what? He gets cancer. And then once he gets, and he was pretty young too. He was only like 50 something. And all these leaders are not super old. They're all within their 50s and 60s, and they all got cancer around the same time. I think it's possible that it was after they all were at the same meeting one time. Maybe somebody got them with the CIA cancer gun, put a little thing in their toe while they're sleeping or something like that. I wouldn't even know. That's what people. It's the urban legend about Bob Marley. That one day in a soccer game, he cut his toe or something like that, or that's what he thought. And they got him with the CIA got him with a cancer gun. That's the urban legend. But I think that definitely with the South American leaders is possible. But Lugo sick, the right wing of the parliament, and turn against all the parliament practically turns against them and votes him out of power with some kind of referendum or something like that. And then they restore the Colorado Party's rule in Paraguay. Colorado Party was the same leader. There was the same party that was of Alfredo Stroessner, the leader for 35 years. And now Horacio Cortez is now the leader and is practically the new Stroessner of the region. And I think somebody just posted on the chat. I don't know. I think that looks like the video of that. Where Bush gets hit with the shoes. I can't play because I'm in the middle of doing the radio show. That shit's pretty hilarious. I gotta say though, of all the stuff that Bush did, that was probably in the top 5 coolest because of the way he dodges the shoes like a ninja. Now he's gonna have a little bit harder time in maybe 10 years when he goes to the ICC or something like that and has to dodge human rights violations and war crimes like a ninja. But I mean, but then that guy got thrown in jail for like 5 years. That's what was messed up. I mean, it's like that just shows the difference between leaders. That Maduro gives the person that smashed a mango on his head a house, and Bush gives that guy a 5-year sentence, and he was in fucking Iraq. It was like this even happened in the United States. This happened in Iraq. I mean, if you go to Iraq, a country is fucking bombed, and somebody throws a shoe at you, and that's all they do, you should be almost a little bit grateful. The fact they threw a shoe, I mean, I know that's like something really offensive in Iraqi culture. Somebody throws a shoe at you. But it's like I think they should be grateful they didn't throw a grenade at him. And it was, we have 15 minutes left, and you also remember that partially one of the major reasons that the South American leaders were so demonized during their tenure as leaders is that they're all anti-Zionist. I mean, we can remember what Chavez said directly: "The maldito Estado de Israel," which which translates to "damn you, state of Israel." And he was talking about Israel doesn't even allow the Palestinians water. It talks about the just cruelty of the of the Israeli occupation of Palestine, and talks about just how Israel influences not just what happens in the Middle East, but they also have, did they influence stuff that happens all around the world. In Latin America, he was talking about how Mossad agents wanted to kill Chavez, wanted to kill this, they planned stuff against South American leaders and against Bolivian. The United States is actually, which is the other part of the dirty trio. The United States, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. The United States has tried to kill Morales, and they've tried to kill Kirchner, or Kirchner said they might try to kill her. I bet they've already tried to kill her. And now that doesn't even matter because that government's out of power. But Kirchner made a rule where if you wanted to become a dual, but they wanted to make a rule that that if you become an Israeli dual citizen, forget about your Argentinian citizenship. You will just be a citizen of Israel because you've obviously proved your loyalty by wanting to become a citizen of a country that is an illegal war criminal state, and that you wanted to partake in a country that has done so much stuff against Argentina economic warfare. Probably the false flag when that bombing happened in 1994. That was blamed on Iran by then when a right-wing government was in charge then. I'm pretty sure that was just some kind of Israeli false flag to get Argentina locked into some hatred against Russia, or not Russia, Iran. And to see somebody who's talking about Russia is now all around South America. Yeah, they are, Russia now is made a lot of alliances with South American countries. Yeah, so Russian, Putin and Chavez were pretty good buddies. And then, but I don't think it was, the one thing I want to talk about, it was just kind of from a more sentimental perspective, is that one of the saddest things I think that to see in international politics is when Ahmadinejad, another anti-New World Order leader, a strong anti-Zionist, strong anti-U.S. imperialist, strong against the bankers, former president of Iran. Now he's a very humble man. He teaches students again after he's already president. And he goes to work on a bus, much like he's very like Mojica of Uruguay, who was former president of Uruguay, and now he's 85 years old. He just recently ended his term. But when Ahmadinejad had to say goodbye to Chavez, I mean, it was a tragic event, really, just to see that, because Ahmadinejad and Chavez were really good friends, I could tell. And it wasn't even like political friendships. This is a real friendship, even though there was the language barrier between the two. it was just clear that Ahmadinejad and Chavez, I mean, they were both thought very similar. They both had the same kind of vibrant energy, passion, just will that they to help the people. And Ahmadinejad, you could tell he was crushed when he saw him when he had to see Chavez in a casket, March 2013. And Ahmadinejad is almost the same age. Actually, I think he's actually a little bit older. I don't think he was expecting to have to see that, but I don't think anybody really was thinking that was going to happen. I think most people thought he was going to pull out of it, but it just happened so quickly. I mean, it was December 2012. He all of a sudden he announced on his last ever TV appearance, he said that the cancer is back. He's going to have to go to emergency surgery in Cuba, and then he goes to. Then he goes to Cuba, and then there's complications, and then he got the respiratory infection, and then he got a lot sicker, and then there was all the right wing scrambling. They were trying to say, the downward Chavez is very sick. They even said he was brain dead, which was a complete lie. It was just they were just trying to rush. They were trying to rush to take power before Chavez was even dead, and then they. And then they made a bunch of lies and stuff like that. Say, now we need a special election now. But and then he recovered for a little bit. He took his last photos. It was like January, maybe February 2013. He died not that long later, because then the respiratory infection came back. Like first week of March was reported, and then people in Venezuela were rallying. They were even kind of distraught and were wondering what's going on with Chavez. What's his conditions? We're not hearing too much about it. And then. They said he was in really bad shape March 4th, March 5th, and then all of a sudden we got the bombshell was dropped. He's dead. He died 4:25 Eastern Time, or Venezuelan Standard Time. It was 3:55 over here. And then just the man that made this all possible, Bolivarian Revolution, that reshaped South America's future, came from the village of Sabarina, Venezuela, and or I think it was I forget. It's like Sabarina or Barinas or something like that. There's the province and there's the city. But he came out of this little small town. Sabaneta was where he's from, and then came from there. Went to the military academy. Came up through the ranks. Went as a political prisoner. Gained all the support. Won a very unlikely election in 1999. Changed the country over 14 years and changed the face of South America. Was dead, just like that. But in Maduro, I think that he still can keep the legacy, and I think Morales and Correa kind of pick up as being the face of the movement. Hopefully, this Venezuelan election went well, and it continues, because if the parliament is fully right wing, who knows what the future of Venezuela is going to look like? What the right wing might try to pull. They might try to pull Maduro out of power, and then Venezuela is another country lost. I mean, we already lost Paraguay and Argentina to the right wing, and hopefully we don't lose. Hopefully we don't lose Venezuela as well. We lost Paraguay and Argentina just in the last few years, 3 years or so, and now hopefully Venezuela doesn't become the third country lost. I think we're like the last 10 minutes of the show here. What is it? That's this photo. There it is right there. That's Ahmadinejad in 2012. Was Chavez looks like, because I remember when Chavez looked like that for a year. He had the buzz cut because of the him fighting cancer and everything. That he only would get his full head of hair late 2012. He got that. That was probably about a year before he passed. Yeah, you can see the Chavez's face of elation to be next to Ahmadinejad. Ahmadinejad was a little bit more serious of a man, so he didn't exactly show the same, happiness, I guess, at times. But I think he just had it more inside. It was more internal. He didn't exactly put it external on his face. Anyways, we are we're about to end the show, so I'm gonna give you a live update. What I can get of what I can get. I don't know if I'll get the final results for you about how this election ended up. And thank Voice of Rebellion Radio. Thank Fort Roos. You can thank Global Public Alert. Thank you can thank RNA News, and you can also thank you can take those main three for for some of the information I have, because I get a lot of information from them. We share a lot on, kind of collaborate on a lot of the stuff. Venezuela 2015 election. I'm looking up right now so I can give you the last update of it, and I'll post it on my page, of course, when I get the results of what happened. Oh, then and here it is. We got, unfortunately, we have the news. I don't know. This looks like, I'm going to give you 95% certainty. At least the right-wing media is claiming victory of the right-wing opposition. And it looks like the opposition has won. Unfortunately, I don't see any claims by the left-wing media that it's only the right-wing media. The opposition is only claiming victory. The Electoral Commission is not claiming. It's not saying, I don't think at this point, that they have won, but that's what the right-wing media is trying to say. It looks like that it doesn't look final, everything, but it looks like at this point the right-wing in Venezuela have won, which would not give the presidency to them. It doesn't work like Europe, where the parliament, if you get the parliamentary leader gets to become the leader of the country. No, it doesn't work like that. Maduro would still be the leader. However, it would bring a lot of concern if these are the final results to the future of Venezuela, because we all know that what are the intentions now if the opposition are fully empower the country, or not fully, but empower the National Assembly. They don't even want the National Assembly. They're going to dissolve that, which was a thing that was voted on by the people to have. I'm pretty sure in 1999 when they voted for the Constitution was the popular vote, direct vote of the people. I'm going to give a shout out to Earth Defense Force. This guy has been. I haven't actually been chatting with him in the chat room, but I kind of just been answering his questions. He brought some good questions and kind of brought some good feedback. Thanks for all the fun tonight. Unfortunately, we have the outcome that looks like the outcome of the election that we did. Which what can we do at this point? We can just sit back and watch and wait till the final results come back. Right now, these early results don't look too good. Hopefully later tonight, we'll get a better news from the Electoral Commission of Venezuela. Remember, they ultimately do have the final results, and it's only from their computers that a vote can be made to the Electoral Commission are only ones that are going to have the knowledge. The media is claiming results before they even get results from the Electoral Commission, which I think is fucked. But the whole right wing in Venezuela is fucked. And if they do take power, I think it is the duty. If they try to seize power, from Maduro, they try to take power easily, or not easily, take power earlier than the 2018 elections for president, and they try to do pretty much a coup. If they try to do either if it is political, like what happened in Paraguay, or is it a coup like what happened in 2000, like what happened in 2002 in Venezuela, the Bolivian militias need to stand up and use their right to bear arms in order to make sure that the Bolivian revolution continues, or else we return to the right wing of the 90s. We don't want to return to the right.
No return, and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little, when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, that commented, kill the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights, when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds him. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return. And if I